minutes, 525,000 moments so dear, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year?
So you probably think you just walked in to the Broadway musical Rent and the song Seasons of Love. You didn't, although these kids, iShear, our kids choir, are good enough to be on Broadway, as you'll see as they perform, sing out this song. But we've been using music here for the past year to open our hearts, to open our minds, to comfort the afflicted, sometimes to afflict the comfortable. No, we won't be singing Silent Night this year. That wasn't a funny email you sent me. I know who you are, right? But we are using music, and we're challenging ourselves to bring to life ideas, because it's not enough to be a Jew in our head. We've been a Jew in our head for too long, and it's not working. It's not speaking to anybody. So it's time to be Jews in our hearts, to not only read Torah, but to feel Torah, which is one of the many beautiful things that Cantor Alana has done, is bring Torah to life through our youth, through many youth opportunities, not the least of which is iShear, who's singing today Seasons of Love. And we're using Seasons of Love because this is Torah. This is the message of the High Holy Days. How do you measure a life? Right? That's what the Machzor is asking us. That's what the Torah is asking us. That's what Rosh Hashanah is asking us. How do you measure a year? How do you measure a life? Because as human beings, we measure. I mean, we measure even before we're on the scene. When we're still in our mother's womb, there are all kinds of measurements to make sure we're on track to becoming who we're supposed to become. And then when we get out and we go into preschool and kindergarten, there's measurements for reading readiness. There's measurements to get into college, ACTs and SATs. All our life, we're being measured, the entirety of our life. The challenge is, it's a lot like having kids, which is another sermon unto itself, the challenges of kids, the beauty of kids, but the challenge is seeing the growth of your kids, because you're too close. So what do we often do? We put our children next to a doorpost and we make little marks on that doorpost. That's actually what we do as Jews to ourselves on Rosh Hashanah, a spiritual doorpost. We mark ourselves and make sure that we're growing, that we're moving forward. We ask ourselves in the past 525,600 minutes, since many of us were here, no guilt, we ask ourselves, right? Did we pass? Did we fail? Could we have done better? Of course we could and would. But Judaism doesn't expect you to be perfect. That's not our religion. Our tradition is about moving forward, right? If you look at the core words in our tradition, they're all about movement. Torah is actually a word, it doesn't mean 5 books of Moses. Torah is an archer's term. It means lirot, to shoot an arrow. So what does that mean? It means we're supposed to live our life walking a path, and we stray, and we leave the path. It happens. It's what life is all about. We call that in Hebrew chet, sin, or avera, transgression. But the real meaning of chet, literally, is to miss the mark. Halakha, Jewish law, is literally a path. And avera means to have left the path. Judaism doesn't expect us to be perfect. God doesn't expect us to be perfect. I was once told that airplanes are off course 95% of the time. And how do they usually, more often than not, land successfully? They constantly and continually come back to their path. They do teshuvah. In 525,600 minutes, we ask ourselves, have you strayed during these minutes? Are you ready to return during the coming minutes? How will you return, right? How will each and every one of us measure our life?
In daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee, in inches, in miles, in laughter and strife, in 525,600 minutes, how do you measure a year in the life?
And so we make a mistake oftentimes when we try and measure our lives. I call it the macro mistake. What's the macro mistake? It's Miss America, or Miss Universe, I guess, today, standing on her world stage on the platform, and what does she always want? World peace, right? And do we have world peace? Just look at the Boston Globe today. We don't have world peace. And we're not going to have world peace while Miss America or Miss Universe is speaking about it on her platform, or while this rabbi is talking about it on his bima. Because peace doesn't happen in the macro. Peace doesn't happen in the big picture. It happens in the micro, in the day-to-day, the ordinary moments of our lives. And that's the macro measuring mistake. We take the big picture sometimes too seriously, right? We'll wait till we have a birthday or an anniversary, particularly a birthday or an anniversary that ends with a 0, some magical number that will check in, that will look at our lives, that will measure our lives. We wait for life cycle events, weddings, or the wedding of our children, or B'nai Mitzvah, the B'nai Mitzvah of our grandchildren. We wait for New Year's Eve to make our resolutions, or Thanksgiving to be grateful and to say I love you to loved ones. Or we wait until the high holy days. As beautiful, as holy, as important as all of those moments are, it's not enough. Planes that only check in at the beginning and at the end and the monumental macro moments tend to crash, and so do human beings. We have so many opportunities, 525,600 opportunities, 525,600 minutes, I'm not going to try and say it again, and moments to measure our life, and not in the macro, right? Not in the big picture, but in the micro, in the details of our life, in the seemingly ordinary moments of our lives. And that's why we just read what we did in the Torah. The rabbis could have chosen anything they wanted to talk about on Rosh Hashanah. They knew the Jews would return, so they didn't choose Bereshit, Genesis, which is about cosmology, the creation of the universe. They didn't choose the Exodus, the narrative of our people from slavery to freedom. They didn't choose too much of Leviticus, thank goodness. They chose, right, what did they choose? Parts of Genesis that deal with mundane human lives. They chose to read about Abraham and Sarah and Hagar and Ishmael and Hannah, individuals leading their individual, seemingly ordinary lives, seemingly ordinary people, living through struggles and joys and everything in between. Oftentimes I'll get, Rabbi, but I want spirituality, right? I want Kabbalah. I want the macro. I don't want this simple day-to-day ordinary life stuff. I want Grand Canyon moments and transcendent experiences, or what I oftentimes call spiritual shock and awe. Right? I want to hear the voice of God. That's what I'm looking for. Maybe we don't say it, but that's kind of what we think of when we think of religion, the days of awe, when we think of spirituality. We could learn a lot from our Buddhist brothers and sisters. They teach us, before you have spiritual shock and awe, and you get it, and you see it, and you understand the macro, the big picture, what do? You chop wood, and you carry water, and then you have that moment of epiphany, and then you're awake, and you get it. But what do the next day? You chop wood, and you carry water. Right? Life is about living ordinary moments, but seeing them as extraordinary moments. In the words of Robert Louis Stevenson, the best things in life are nearest. The breath in your nostrils, the light in your eyes, the flowers at the feet, the duties in your hand, the opportunities in your hand, right? Don't grasp for the stars. Stop looking at the stars. Do what's in front of you, life's plain, common work as it comes, certain that the daily duties and the daily bread are the sweetest things in life. This is how we measure a good life, in daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee, in the seemingly ordinary activities, shopping at the supermarket, doing the dishes, paying the bills, driving carpool, going to school or work, doing our schoolwork, doing our work at work, even emailing and texting and talking on the phone. all can be transformed from the ordinary into the extraordinary if we see them as opportunities, if we see them as meaning. Because if they're meaningless, then our lives are meaningless, because this is how we fill our lives. In inches, in miles, in laughter, in strife, in the seemingly ordinary encounters, sitting down with your family to have a meal, tucking your kids at night into bed, visiting with a friend, just talking to a friend, talking on the phone with your booby, call your booby more, right? And your Zadie more. Laughing and arguing with a parent or a child or siblings. It's all about the extraordinary, laughter and strife. These are not meaningless moments. These are not ordinary moments. They're only ordinary until you can't do them anymore. They're only ordinary until that person is no longer sitting by your side. They're only ordinary until the moments are gone. And pretty soon, for each and every one of us, the moments will be gone. 525,600 moments we had this past year. How did we measure and how did we live our life? Of course, it's simple, right? I know we all understand this, but we forget. I forget, you forget, Moses forgot. The Buddhists call this the monkey mind, where our mind is like a monkey, jumping from branch to branch, tree to tree, living in the past, projecting into the future, but not present. And I call this the Moses mind. Why? Because Moses, the mighty Moses himself, was called to stand before God. And it says, and the Lord said to God, come up to me on the mountain, Vayesham, and be there. And the rabbis say, isn't that redundant? If you're already up on the mountain, Vayesham, aren't you already there? And the obvious answer is no. You can be somewhere and not really be there. You can stand in front of a burning bush and not see that it's being consumed, that it's a miracle on fire. You can stand in front of the Almighty herself and not know before whom you stand. We are so busy grasping for the stars that we miss the path upon which we're standing. And we are so busy living in the past that we miss the people right in front of us who are living in the present. And we are so busy worrying about the future that we miss out on the simple miracle like breath in our nostrils, the duties in front of us, and the flowers at our feet. Thornton Wilder once said, my advice to you is not to inquire whither or why, but just to enjoy your ice cream while it's on your plate, before it melts, before it's too late. You can stand in front of an opportunity. You can stand in front of a situation, a sunset, a cup of coffee, a plate of ice cream, and not really be there, and not be present, and therefore not really be alive. And God forbid, you can stand in front of a loved one, a child, your spouse, your parent, your sister, your brother, your grandparent, your grandchild, and not see them, and not hear them, and not really be there with them. Vayesham, come up to the mountain, enter into those relationships, and don't just show up, but be there, be present. 525,600 moments in our year. Those moments and those years adding up to define our lives. My friends, this is what each and every one of us has to account for today on Rosh Hashanah. How did we spend those moments? Who do we walk past? How did we miss out on the micro, the seemingly ordinary moments, the seemingly ordinary encounters, the seemingly ordinary people in our lives? And this is what it means to be a Jew. It's not as complicated as we turned it into. What does it mean to be a Jew? To wake up every morning and say, Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shehechezarta bi nishmati bechemla, Rabbi emunatecha, which is a mouthful. But you can also just wake up and say Todah, the same word, which means thank you. To be a Jew, Yehudi or Yehudiya, means to live a life of modeh, of discerning the moment of Todah, of feeling grateful for all that we have been given. To live life like Thich Nhat Hanh said every morning when we wake up, We have 24 brand new hours to live. What a precious gift. We have the capacity to live in a way that does bring peace, brings peace during the 24 hours to ourselves and to the people in our lives, and therefore bring peace to the world. Our Zen masters understood what our Zaidi masters and Bubi masters understand, what the master Abraham Joshua Heschel, the great rabbi, said. The beginning of our happiness lies in the understanding that life without wonder is not worth living. What we lack is not a will to believe. What we lack is wonder. What we lack is radical amazement. What we lack is the ability to sense and feel awe. To wake up and say, wow, not just the macro, magical moments, but the micro, seemingly ordinary moments. To wake up like Jacob, our ancestor, who was asleep in the desert. Jacob was walking through his life sleepwalking, and he says, Achen yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati. God was always in this place, and I just didn't see it. This place is awesome, he says. This place is miraculous. This is the house of Adonai, and this moment alone is the gateway to heaven.
525,600 minutes, 525,000 journeys to plan,
525,600 minutes. How do you measure the life of a woman or a man?
in truth that she learned, or in times that he cried, in bridges he burned, or the way that she died.
In 525,600 minutes, how do you measure a year in a life?
So there's a teaching in our tradition about two brothers, Elimelech and Zusha. Elimelech is rich and Zusha is poor. And students come to Elimelech and say, we want to know how to live out the V'ahavta, where it says, love God, b'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol meodecha. Love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your might, but not just on the good days. How do you live that on the bad days? He says, my brother is better suited. My brother is poor. No matter how much money I give him, he gives it away. And they found Reb Zusha huddled in the shul next to a furnace to keep warm and rags and dirty. And they said to him, Reb Zusha, right, how do you love God on a bad day? And he thought about it. And he said, I don't know. I've never had a bad day. Really? Reb Zusha, you're poor. You're dirty. You're hungry, right? You have dreams that have gone unfulfilled. You've lost loved ones. You've never had a bad day? Of course he had a bad day. He was trying to teach his students what the song Seasons of Love is trying to teach us, that a life worth living, a good life, is not just measured on the good days, but on the bad days too. Not just the macro, but the micro. The day-to-day where we live our lives is messy and struggle-filled, as we learned from Abraham and Sarah and Hagar. You think you're the only one with a dysfunctional family? My friends, get in line. It goes back to the Torah itself. Everybody's part of a dysfunctional family. There is no such thing as a dysfunctional family. All of ours are dysfunctional. We deal with estrangement and struggles and strains and tension and addictions and heartache and heartbreak during the past 525,600 minutes and moments. There isn't a person here who hasn't experienced that strain, that struggle. There isn't a person here who hasn't hurt somebody or been hurt by somebody you love, neglected or been neglected, betrayed or been betrayed, forgotten or been forgotten. There isn't a single person here who hasn't in one of those moments failed somebody else or been failed by somebody you love. Measuring our lives is not about perfection. Perfection exists in fairy tales and in those Miss America platitudes and in the macro utopian mystical moments. But there's nothing perfect about life. And there's nothing perfect about the micro. There's nothing perfect about the day-to-day and the messy relationships, the messy moments in all of our lives. Corita Kent said, love the moment, the light moments and the dark moments too, because flowers grow out of the dark. Therefore, each moment is vital. It affects the whole. Life is a succession of the light moments and the dark moments and the macro and the micro and the perfect and the imperfect too. To succeed is to remember, right? In truths that she learned, or in times that he cried, in bridges he burned, or the way that she died. It's only a bad day if we don't learn truth from it. It's only a bad day if we run away from the heartache and tears. It's only a bad day if we continue to walk past those burnt bridges and not fix them. It's only a bad day if we continue to miss out the moments of our lives. The song ends with Remember the Love, and it's going to end in a few moments, don't worry. But before we end, Stephen Covey, author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, was approached, he was a therapist, and was approached by a client and says, I don't love my wife anymore. And he says, so why don't you try loving her? The husband's confused. Covey explains, love is a verb. Love the feeling is a fruit of love the verb. So sacrifice more for her, listen to her more, empathize more, appreciate her more, affirm her more. Remember the love is not sitting around waiting to feel the love on those mystical macro moments. It's not sitting around waiting for the love in the light moments and the happy moments. We love other people. We remember the love when we take those seemingly ordinary moments and we pay attention. When we go into the stressful moments and the broken moments and we bring to it the light of our neshama, the light of ourselves, our highest calling, and the reason why we're here, to do teshuvah, to return to that place of love, to remember the love. So let me end with this, the most important macro and micro moment of the previous year since the last time we gathered here. And it revolves around, of course, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a man of the macro, right? Like nobody in our lifetime. He redefined the way we compute, the way we live, right, with the iPad and the iPod and the iPhone and Pixar films. Steve Jobs was not great with the micro. Steve Jobs wasn't the most loving husband or attentive father from everything I've read and everything I've heard, and even to his own testament. Steve Jobs was not the most loving man. Read his autobiography. But one day, Steve Jobs woke up. Where did he wake up? When did he wake up? On his deathbed. Steve's final request before he left this life, as recorded by his sister Mona, and you can read about it in the New York Times, his final request was not to sit and talk about the forthcoming iPhone 5. It wasn't to hold the hand of Tim Cook, his CEO and successor, right? It wasn't to be surrounded by movie stars and dignitaries or anybody or anything that Steve could have wanted or had in the macro. What did Steve want in his final moments? He wanted his family. He wanted his wife and his 2 children and his sister to be by his side. And what did he want to talk about? Not the macro accomplishments of his life. He wanted to talk about them and their relationship. In that moment before he died, Steve Jobs, all he wanted to do was talk about the love to the people who loved him and to the people whom he loved. And Steve Jobs left this world with 6 words on his tongue. Words not of the macro, words about the micro, words about his wife and his children and his sister and his life and his love. What were the last 6 words that Steve Jobs said in this lifetime? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. My friends, Steve Jobs had a lot of bad days in his life, but his day of his death was not one of them because he woke up before it was too late. And he understood what was important, and he returned, and he remembered the love. In the words of Babatunde Olatunji, thought I had a hard name, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. All we have is right now, and right now, and right now. There is no tomorrow. There is no yesterday. There's 525,600 moments to wake up and say, oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow.
It's time now to sing out, though the story never ends. Let's celebrate, remember a year in the life of friends. Remember the love. Remember the love.
going to sing about the wow. We're going to feel the wow as the kids remain standing, as you join them, right? As we all open our hearts, as we join in, and we're present, and we put our hands together, and we open our hearts, and we sing the words on the blue sheet, and we say, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. Join us.
525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments so dear, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? In daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee, in inches, in miles, in laughter and strife, in 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year in the life? 525,600 minutes, 525,000 words to plan, 525,600 minutes.
The words are right in front of you.
How do you measure a woman or man? 525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments so dear, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? It's time now to sing out, the story never ends. Let's celebrate, remember a year in the life of friends. Remember the love. Remember the love. Remember the love. Measuring love. Seasons of love. Seasons of love.
We're not stopping until everybody's singing, joining Aishir. We got until Yom Kippur. So open your hearts and your mouths and say, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow, as our little oh wows come in from the back. 525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments so dear, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? Big Yashikoach to Aishir and to Cantor Lana on very little notice. Right, on very little notice, they stepped up and they beautifully gave us their voices and their hearts and their souls. Thank you to Aishir.